my life, I've been told that owning a house was going to be the key to financial success. That if I don't own, it's because I don't have the money, or if I'm renting, I'm pretty much throwing money down the drain. But what if I was going to tell you that actually owning a house today pretty much isn't as worth of a financial investment as it used to be? In fact, myself, I'm going to take the controversial statement that I refuse to own a house anymore. Look, I'm 32 years old, and pretty much for the past 10 years, I've been obsessed about money. Not just how to make it, but also kind of pushing investments to its limit. At some point at 27 years old, I was earning $250,000 running as a negotiator for Amazon. I ran myself through some of the top schools, and still, I didn't buy a house. And you're going to tell me, well, Romain, is it because you don't have the money? No, I could very well take a regular house with a down payment. Is it because I'm moving too much? No, I see myself here in Las Vegas for the next couple of years. Is it because I'm bitter that I didn't hit during the COVID era on the super low interest rates that were happening? Well, not really. I mean, the S&P 500 since March 2020 has risen 115%, when housing has risen 39%. So what is it then? The current economy right now isn't prone to this form of investment. We are pretty much being continually sold that dream. The American dream, the white picket fence, the home ownership, the space, and all of that at the end of the day, well, it's manufactured. It's manufactured by banks, it's manufactured by lenders, by the governments, because owning the equity on a house, there is a bunch of what is referred to as phantom expenses. And not only that, is the return that you can obtain from investing in a house today isn't justified. We still have the dream, we still have the same message, but the system currently doesn't support financially this wise of a decision. Owning a house, guys, used to make sense. A few decades ago, someone would buy a house, it would cost 2 to 3 times their income, they would go on a 15 to 20 year mortgage, and it would be, paid off with quite a bit of money left over. Today, people are putting 3% down, they are taking 30 years loan that are pushing the limits on what they can afford, and for many of them, they end up house poor with a ton of stress, and if something arises, it falls on credit cards, and then a crazy interest rate comes into play. I'm going to be running you through a few numbers here. The median house price in America is about, right now, $416,000, right? And interest rates for mortgage are currently varying between 6-7% or so. When I think about an investment, okay, especially when it comes to justifying renting versus buying, I like to apply the rule of 9%. Right now, assuming all of the costs that fall under house ownership, it's not just the mortgage, right? It's the insurance on that mortgage. It's the insurance on that house. It's the maintenance cost. It's the property tax. For example, this house right here, right? This house right here is worth right now in Las Vegas about $500,000, okay? And what I want to do is multiply that $500,000 by 9%. So that's $45,000. I'm going to divide that by 12, and that brings me to $3,750. If I can rent that house for less than $3,750, I am much better renting. Well, that house, guys, is currently on rent for $2,100. So why in hell am I going to buy that house? When we think about just house appreciation compared to other forms of investments, like say stocks, for example, house appreciate on average between 3 and 4% a year. The S&P 500 grows, 10% on average per year. Sorry about the dog, but you're live with me walking through this nice neighborhood. When we think about this house purchase decision, why would I want to lock my money into illiquid position, be on a hook for any form of issue that arise with the house, especially if we're thinking about it of an investment with tenants, but more on that later. Right now, if you buy a house, it takes you on average about 5 to 7 years to break even on it. Now, there have been recent fluctuations in the market. Yes, with the COVID, everything exploded. As I mentioned earlier in the video, housing since March 2020 has increased by about 39%. But still, especially when you're taking those low down payments mortgages. Fun fact, it takes 17 years on a mortgage for you guys to pay more in principal than interest per month. For the first few years, you're not even touching the principal. Again, 5 to 7 years to break even. On top of that, as I mentioned previously, this is money that is now being locked down. And in the world that we currently live, we want some more flexibility, liquidity in the game. Some of you may know, I am a serial investor, meaning that I invest in so many forms of assets, from passive to, manufacturing to software. And even in housing, I haven't put my feet into it. And there is a reason for that. It's because I've heard a countless amount of nightmare stories about tenants not paying, eviction, or houses that become destroyed. Now, it depends, of course, the type of house that you rent, but still, today financially, it doesn't really make sense. When I think about a house for an investment proposition, especially here in Las Vegas, I like to apply the 1% rule. Meaning if a house cost me $500,000, I want to try, which is madness, to rent it for at least 1% of its value per month. That's $5,000. Now, in some of the states in America, the Wisconsin, the Tennessee of the world, you can find properties that have this 1% rule. But today, for higher standing houses, it's really scarce. And right now, I'm having a really hard time finding people in realtor to tell me that there are good deals in the market. Now, there are always going to be some slight good deals here and there, but everybody wants top dollars generally for their houses, so you're going to be paying that house at a pretty steep price. Flipping has become so noticeable that people are no longer willing to pay some of those premiums. That's just the way things have progressed. Again, the house used to make sense as an investment. Today, I don't want to bother if something was to break inside of my house or something happens with the fridge or the AC. I call the unit, they come, it doesn't cost me a cent, and I go my way. In fact, in my current unit that I'm renting, I'm paying about $2,100 per month on a $500,000 house, and there was a leak, $8,000 leak, okay? I paid zero. If I was the landlord, this would have been months of cash flow and potentially actually impact definitely the profitability that I have on that house for the year of ownership. And that is only one of the issues. Does house ownership and the fact that I'm refusing to buy a house applies to everyone? Well, not really, okay? There are specific scenarios where I can justify that. One of which is, are you going to be staying in that property for at least 10 years? How are you about investing the money that you will be putting towards your mortgage? Meaning, if it's to buy a trip to Hawaii or to put into the damn Starbucks coffee on a monthly basis instead of investing that money, I'd rather you have a forcing mechanism to put into a house that gives you really good equity. Okay, where you're building equity, you're almost building an automatic saving plan if you cannot trust yourself with your investment. But personally, me, as a wise investor that generally wants to optimize my finances, I can't justify putting that money into a real estate position today. I rather invest it into the market. In fact, in one of the recent appearances of Warren Buffett, he was asked the question, if you were 21 years old and you had money, right now, would you be investing into real estate? He said, absolutely not. Today, it's too much constraint.
In respect to real estate, it's so much harder than stocks in terms of negotiation of deals, time spent, the involvement of multiple parties.
There are so many things that can go wrong. And he mentioned investing into the S&P 500, for example. Now, I'm not saying, again, do not diversify your investments. I'm always prone to diversification. In fact, this channel is now going to showcase more and more the variety of investments that I put myself into. But house and real estate is not going to be one of them. Right now, especially with how the interest rates are going, it just doesn't make sense. Just be mindful with how you invest your money. Always question the rationale and just make sure that the math is right to justify this form of investment. Guys, I hope you enjoy those one-take form of videos. Take care, and I see you in the next video. À bientôt.